I stood on their doorstep, the Arizona sun sharp against my face, a box of cookies cooling in my hands. Inside, laughter echoed, a sound that didn't include me. "It's a girls-only dinner," Lindsay said, smiling like exclusion was etiquette. After years of planning every celebration, paying every bill, and holding this family together with quiet grace, I was suddenly too inconvenient for the guest list. They wanted a dinner without me, so I made sure there wasn't a dinner at all. "We're about to begin, but if you'd like, share where you're joining from." It reminds me this story doesn't echo into silence. It lands somewhere real. Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. The scent of butter and vanilla filled Evelyn Hartley's kitchen as the last batch of cookies cooled on the wire rack. She'd made them from memory. Lindsay's favorite kind, salted caramel chip, though she doubted anyone would notice the detail. Baking had always been Evelyn's quiet language of care, a way to smooth over sharp edges and keep family gatherings running on civility. Outside, the Arizona sun threw honey-colored light across her backyard, hitting the rose bushes she'd pruned that morning. It was the kind of day that made you want to believe everything was steady and warm. She boxed the cookies neatly, tied them with a pale pink ribbon, and slipped her shoes on. The drive to Jason and Lindsay's house took 12 minutes. 12 minutes to rehearse pleasantries. 12 minutes to remind herself she was doing this for peace, not approval. When Lindsay opened the door, she was on her phone, laughing. That high, performative tone Evelyn had learned meant audience present. "Oh, Evelyn, hi," Lindsay said, tucking her phone to her shoulder. Her perfume hit first, sharp, floral, a little overdone. "You didn't have to." "They're just cookies," Evelyn said gently. "Thought you might enjoy them for your birthday week." Lindsay accepted the box without even looking at it, setting it on the console table near the entryway. "You're too sweet," she murmured, eyes flicking back to her phone screen. Then, with a bright, distracted smile, she added, "Oh, by the way, we're doing a little girls-only dinner on Thursday. Just a few of my close friends. Nothing big." Evelyn paused. "Girls only?" "Yeah," Lindsay said quickly. "You know, wine, gossip, no drama. You wouldn't have fun with that." She laughed in a way that didn't invite disagreement. Jason appeared behind her, sleeves rolled up, face uncertain. "Hey, Mom," he said. "It's just friends this year. I told Lindsay to keep it small." Evelyn nodded slowly, folding her hands in front of her. "Of course. That makes sense." Jason looked relieved. Lindsay, already halfway back to her conversation, didn't notice the faint tightness in Evelyn's smile. When she left, the cookies were still sitting unopened, on the table. That night, Evelyn made tea and scrolled through Facebook. Not something she did often, but curiosity itched. Lindsay had already posted a photo, "Birthday countdown dinner planning begins." The comments were a parade of heart emojis and "can't wait." Among the tagged names, Evelyn spotted something odd. Denise Hartley, Jason's stepmother. Her breath caught for a moment, as if she'd swallowed a shard of ice. Denise, who'd been at the wedding only once since, was invited. But not her. Evelyn stared at the screen, the cursor blinking on the search bar like a pulse. Her throat tightened, but she forced herself to breathe. Slow and steady. She was 63, not 16. She didn't do scenes. The phone buzzed. Marla's name lit up the screen. Her former assistant, now her closest friend and partner in mischief. Evelyn answered, keeping her voice even. "Evening, Marla." "I just got off Facebook," Marla said without preamble. "You were excluded? From your own family's table?" Evelyn exhaled softly. "Seems so." "The stepmom is going? Oh, that's rich." "Apparently, it's girls only." Marla snorted. "So you're not a girl anymore?" Evelyn smiled faintly. "Apparently not one of the right ones." There was a pause. the kind of silence between friends who knew exactly what the other was thinking. "Don't you dare let this one slide, Evie," Marla said. "You've been too gracious for too long." Evelyn looked toward the window. Across the street, the neighborhood was quiet, the air tinted orange by the street lamps. "I don't intend to cause a scene," she said finally. "But I don't think I'll be baking cookies again anytime soon." "Good," Marla said. "Because I have a better idea." Evelyn's pulse quickened just slightly. "Do tell." "Not yet," Marla teased. "But let's just say, if they're hosting a dinner, you might want to check who's really making the reservations." Evelyn's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "Call me tomorrow morning. You'll see." The line went quiet, leaving Evelyn alone with the hum of her refrigerator and the faint, sugary smell still clinging to the air. She poured the rest of her tea down the sink. The sweetness suddenly tasted wrong. Then she opened her calendar app, scrolled to Thursday, and tapped the day with her finger. The small, polite smile returned to her lips. Colder this time. "Girls only," she murmured to the empty kitchen. "Fine. Let's see how that goes." Morning light spilled across the marble countertops of Evelyn's kitchen, catching the rim of her coffee mug like a small, defiant halo. The sweetness from yesterday's baking still hung faintly in the air, too bright, too hopeful for the mood that had settled overnight. She sat at the breakfast bar, laptop open, email tabs blinking with their quiet insistence. Her phone buzzed once, twice, a third time. "Marla. Check the restaurant," the text read. "Steakhouse they always go to. You might be amused." Evelyn arched a brow. She opened the reservation app she'd once used obsessively for clients during her event planning days. Her fingers remembered the rhythm of it. Search, scroll, confirm, manage. Muscle memory from years of orchestrating other people's celebrations. In the search bar, she typed Hartley. The screen took a second longer than usual to load, and then it appeared. Reservation. Thursday, 7:00 p.m. Hartley. Party of 10. Her name was listed as the primary contact. Evelyn blinked, then let out a short, humorless laugh. Of course. Jason hadn't changed the old autofill from the years when she handled all family dinners, birthdays, and anniversaries. A mother's invisible labor turned into lazy convenience. She clicked View Details. The app expanded to reveal everything. Table request, special notes, linked card. Her card, naturally. Her smile thinned. "Out of laziness," she whispered, testing the phrase. It tasted bitter. There was a small link beneath the reservation. Manage booking. She hesitated, thumb hovering over the option like a diver measuring the height before the plunge. She tapped it. No password prompt, no verification text. The entire dashboard opened as if waiting for her command. Evelyn exhaled slowly, the faint hum of satisfaction rippling beneath her composure. Years of professional courtesy had taught her to keep her face neutral, but inside, the balance was shifting. From hurt to calculation. Scrolling through the details, she saw it. Notes. Birthday celebration for Lindsay. No mother-in-law. For a moment, the words didn't quite land. Then, when they did, it was like a glass splinter beneath her skin. Small, but impossible to ignore. The phrasing wasn't even subtle. No mother-in-law. Like she was an allergen to be kept out of the dish. Evelyn leaned back in her chair, the silence in her house so sharp she could hear the faint tick of the kitchen clock. Her lips pressed together in a thin, measured line. Then, deliberately, she took a screenshot. The soft click of her phone's capture sound felt like a punctuation mark. Quiet, decisive, final. She opened her messages, scrolled to Marla, and attached the image. Her text was brief. Interesting. Within seconds, the typing dots appeared. "Oh, honey," Marla replied. "They have no idea who they're dealing with." Evelyn's mouth curved. Not into a smile exactly, but something adjacent. They really don't, she murmured. She closed the app and reached for her planner, flipping it open to Thursday again. The blue ink from last night's note still glimmered faintly under the morning light. She drew a neat little box around it. Then she called the steakhouse. Tuscany Prime, this is Tina, came a familiar voice. Bright, professional, warm. Tina? It's Evelyn Hartley. A pause, then a delighted, Miss Hartley? Oh my, gosh, hi. How are you? We haven't had you here well, since that charity gala. It's been a while, Evelyn said, voice calm. I just wanted to confirm a reservation I believe is under my name. Party of 10, Thursday evening. There was a rustle of papers, the tap of a keyboard. Yes, ma'am, we have you listed as the contact for the Hartley party. I see. Evelyn smiled faintly. Can you tell me who placed that reservation? Well, Tina hesitated. The system still shows your number on file, but the guest note says, for Lindsay Hartley's birthday? Evelyn's tone stayed polite, but the sound carried an undertone Tina, ever perceptive, immediately caught. I was surprised not to see your name on the guest list, honestly, Tina said softly. You've always been the one who, well, made things work. That's quite all right, dear, Evelyn replied. Thank you for confirming. Any changes you'd like me to make? Evelyn considered the question, then said, Not at this moment, I'll handle it through the app. When the call ended, she sat still for several seconds, feeling the weight of the morning settle around her shoulders, heavy, but not unpleasant. Her phone buzzed again. Marla. So, what's next? Evelyn typed. Oh, just a little housekeeping. She reopened the reservation. The cancel reservation button gleamed in soft red, like a polite invitation. Her finger hovered above it. Not yet. Not now. Timing, after all, was everything. Instead, she clicked Add Private Note and typed 3 words she'd never need to send to anyone else. Message received. She saved it, closed the app, and glanced out the kitchen window. The morning light had sharpened into noon. Somewhere in the distance, a sprinkler sputtered to life, breaking the stillness. Evelyn took another sip of her now cold coffee, and the faintest glint of anticipation flickered in her eyes. Thursday was starting to look very interesting. By Wednesday afternoon, Evelyn's house was spotless, the kind of spotless that came from restless hands. She'd rearranged the pantry, polished the silver tray that hadn't seen daylight in months, and still the energy hummed under her skin, sharp and electric. The phone sat on the counter beside her, Tina's contact already open. The red cancel reservation button from yesterday still lingered in her mind, like an itch begging to be scratched. She took a steadying breath and hit call. Tuscany Prime, this is Tina. Hi, sweetheart, it's Evelyn Hartley again. A beat, and then a small rush of warmth. Oh, Ms. Hartley. I was actually wondering if I'd hear from you. Evelyn's tone was light, almost conversational. I just wanted to confirm that the reservation for Thursday evening has been canceled. There was a faint sound of keys clicking. Let me check. Yes, ma'am. Canceled as of this morning. System shows it under your authorization. Tina hesitated, lowering her voice slightly. I saw you weren't listed on the guest notes, honestly. I was surprised. Evelyn smiled, though Tina couldn't see it. It happens. Thank you for letting me know, dear. I appreciate your help. Of course, Tina said softly. And, Ms. Hartley, good for you. The line went quiet after that. A quiet Evelyn didn't mind. It wasn't vindictive silence. It was clean, like a slate being wiped down after years of fingerprints. She set the phone back on the counter, the faintest hum of satisfaction threading through her chest. Just then, the doorbell chimed. Through the frosted glass, she saw Marla's silhouette, one hand on her hip, the other holding a bottle of wine like a prize. Evelyn opened the door before the second ring. "Well?" Marla asked, stepping in, eyes bright. "Do we toast to justice or patience?" "Justice, I think," Evelyn said, gesturing her inside. "The reservation's gone." Marla's grin spread slow and wide. "You magnificent woman." She set the bottle on the counter and inspected the label. Chardonnay. It felt appropriate. Something cool and smug. Evelyn chuckled, fetching 2 glasses. "You're terrible." "I'm resourceful," Marla countered. "There's a difference." They clinked glasses, the sound bright and delicate against the late afternoon quiet. For a moment neither spoke. Then Marla leaned an elbow on the counter. "So what's next? You've canceled their dinner. What about yours?" Evelyn tilted her head. "Mine?" "Oh, come on," Marla said. "You can't spend Thursday night eating reheated soup while those two wander around wondering where their table went. You need a better view." Evelyn thought for a moment, then reached for her phone again. "Maybe I do." Within minutes, she had a reservation booked. A single seat at Ember, the high-end restaurant across the same plaza as Tuscany Prime. Window view, 7 p.m. sharp. A perfect vantage point. Marla watched her with something between admiration and amusement. "Dinner for one?" "Dinner for peace," Evelyn corrected, her tone smooth. "And perhaps perspective." Marla raised her glass again. "To perspective." They drank, and the conversation drifted to lighter things. Travel plans, a new farmer's market opening near the lake. But beneath it all, a quiet pulse of anticipation lingered, steady as a heartbeat. When Marla finally left, twilight had stretched across the Scottsdale sky, painting everything in dusty rose. Evelyn stood by the window, watching the desert light fade into its softer shades. Her phone buzzed on the counter. "Jason. See you Thursday." Evelyn read it once, twice. No apology, no context. Just the familiar assumption that she'd be there, waiting, smiling, the dependable mother smoothing over the cracks he refused to see. She placed the phone face down, the screen going dark, beneath her fingertips. For a few seconds she just listened to the distant hum of sprinklers, the creak of settling wood, the faint clink of wind chimes outside. The house, so often filled with other people's needs, finally felt still. She poured the last inch of wine into her glass, lifted it slightly, and whispered, "Here's to empty tables." The taste was crisp, not sweet, but perfectly dry. Then she opened her planner, drew a thin gold line through Thursday's blank space, and wrote one word beside it in careful cursive. Reserved. She closed the book with a soft snap and turned off the kitchen light. Tomorrow, she thought, they'd learn the difference between a hostess and the hand that holds the reservation. The night air in Scottsdale carried that faint, dry coolness that came only after the desert sun finally gave up its fight. Evelyn stepped out of her car, the click of her heels sharp against the cobblestones of the plaza. Every movement of hers tonight felt deliberate, unhurried, but with purpose. Her reflection caught in the glass of Ember's front doors as she entered. Silver silk blouse, tailored black slacks, soft waves of hair pinned neatly behind one ear. The diamond studs Jason had given her for Mother's Day, back when he still thought gestures mattered, sparkled under the restaurant's soft lighting. The hostess, a young woman with warm brown eyes, greeted her with a smile. "Good evening. Reservation for one?" "Yes," Evelyn said. "Hartley. 7 o'clock. Window seat, if it's ready." "Of course, Ms. Hartley. Right this way." The dining room opened before her. Glass walls overlooking the plaza, flickering amber light from the patio lanterns spilling inside. Evelyn's seat was perfect. A clear view of Tuscany Prime across the way, its modern facade gleaming like a stage about to host its players. She settled into her chair, smoothed her napkin, and glanced at her watch. 6:58. The waiter arrived, Tall and courteous, his demeanor the kind that anticipated needs without questions. "Can I start you off with a drink this evening?" "Pinot Noir," she said. "Something smooth. And take your time with the order. I'm in no rush." As he disappeared toward the bar, Evelyn looked out the window again. Tuscany Prime was beginning to fill. Cars pulled up. Valets hurried back and forth. Laughter drifted faintly across the plaza. She watched as the minute hand crept past 7. At 7:10, a burst of color and motion caught her eye. Lindsay, in a sequined champagne dress far too glittery for the understated elegance of the steakhouse, stepped onto the curb, surrounded by her friends. She looked animated, waving her phone, scanning the entrance with that impatient edge Evelyn knew too well. The group lingered outside longer than expected. Evelyn tilted her head slightly, her expression unreadable. Then, right on cue, Jason appeared. He jogged up from the parking lot, his tie slightly askew, phone in hand, face already apologetic. Evelyn could almost hear the excuses forming before he even reached the door. Lindsay gestured wildly toward the hostess stand inside. Jason nodded, then turned, scanning the restaurant interior. Confusion etched plainly on his face. Evelyn took a slow sip of her wine, letting the flavor bloom across her tongue. The waiter reappeared. "Everything all right, Miss Hartley?" "Everything's wonderful," she said, her eyes still on the scene unfolding across the plaza. "I've got quite the view tonight." Tuscany Prime's front windows revealed fragments of motion, a hostess flipping through her reservation tablet, Lindsay's voice visible in her body language, high-pitched, indignant. Her friends hovered behind her, uncertain whether to stay or slink away. Jason rubbed the back of his neck, clearly mortified. He looked toward the plaza briefly, and for a fleeting moment, Evelyn wondered if he'd spot her through the glass. But his gaze passed right over. At Ember, the waiter placed her entree in front of her. Roasted salmon over wilted greens, elegantly plated. She thanked him softly and lifted her fork, the silver catching the light as Tuscany Prime's patio lights flickered on behind him, illuminating the awkward standoff still unfolding across the way. Her phone buzzed on the table. A text from Marla. "They there yet?" Evelyn typed back. "Front row view." She hesitated, then added a second message. "They didn't plan for this." She looked up, and there, through the shimmer of glass and distance, Tina appeared at Tuscany Prime's host stand. The younger woman's expression remained professional, but when she caught sight of Evelyn seated across the plaza, she smiled subtly and lifted a discreet thumbs up. Evelyn's heart gave the faintest flutter of amusement. She raised her wine glass in acknowledgement, a silent toast carried across the space between them. By 7:25, Lindsay's group had begun to disperse, some muttering into their phones, others pulling car keys from clutches. Jason stood frozen, helpless, as Lindsay stalked away toward the valet, heels striking sharp notes of fury against the stone. Evelyn finished her salmon and signaled for the dessert menu, calm and precise. Outside, Tuscany Prime's empty patio gleamed under the glow of string lights. A table for 10, waiting for no one. As she scrolled through the dessert list, she allowed herself one small, unguarded smile. The waiter returned. "Would you care for anything sweet?" "Not tonight," she said softly. "I've had enough." She took one last sip of wine, eyes on the darkened reflection of her own face in the glass. Calm, elegant, composed. The face of a woman who had finally stopped asking for a seat at someone else's table. Then she rose, left a generous tip, and stepped out into the cool night air. Behind her, Tuscany Prime's lights dimmed to half glow. Across the plaza, Tina leaned against the hostess podium and mouthed a silent word of approval before turning back inside. Evelyn smiled faintly, her heels clicking in steady rhythm as she crossed the plaza toward her car. Tomorrow, she thought, the apologies would begin. And she already knew. She wouldn't be accepting any. The next afternoon brought a strange sort of calm, the quiet that follows a storm you secretly orchestrated. Evelyn sat on her sunlit patio, coffee in hand, as the desert breeze drifted through the garden. Her phone buzzed softly on the table beside her. Matt Gold, Tuscany Prime. "Call when you have a minute, Evelyn." She smiled faintly. Matt had been the restaurant's general manager for years, sharp and composed, the kind of man who could turn chaos into charm with a single phone call. She dialed him immediately. "Evelyn," he greeted, his voice warm but laced with amusement. "I had a feeling I'd hear from you today." "Trouble last night?" she asked, tone almost polite. He chuckled under his breath. "Let's just say your family made quite the entrance and exit." Evelyn leaned back in her chair, gaze on the soft flutter of her rose bushes. "Do tell." "Well," Matt began, "Tina told me the moment she saw them walk in. The reservation had been canceled earlier that morning under your authorization. We tried to find them another table, but we were fully booked. Every seat, every booth." "I imagine that didn't sit well with Lindsay." "That's putting it mildly." His laughter was controlled, almost professional, but Evelyn could picture his expression, that diplomatic smile he used to diffuse drama at charity galas. "Tina offered them the patio, nice setup, heaters, string lights. Frankly, it's a better spot than most people get." "And?" "She refused," Matt said. "Claimed it was too drafty and that the birthday ambiance was ruined. Eventually they left. No food, no drinks, just gone." Evelyn let the silence stretch a beat too long before responding. "Pity." Matt cleared his throat, tone softening. "For what it's worth, I told Tina you handled that with more restraint than I would have. And Evelyn, she's loyal to you. Always has been." "I know," she said gently. "She's good people." He hesitated. "Would you like a copy of the cancellation log? Just for your records?" Evelyn smiled, that small, perfectly measured smile that never revealed how much she was enjoying this. "Yes, Matt. That would be lovely. Send it to my personal email." "Consider it done." When they hung up, she sat for a moment longer, watching the light shift across her backyard. The stillness felt earned. She set her cup down and glanced at her phone again. One new notification from Instagram. "Counts Lindsay Hartley. No tables anywhere. Guess we'll just take cute pics instead." The post was tagged, "Chad birthday disaster," and featured Lindsay's trademark pout, her friends clustered awkwardly behind her. The background, unmistakably, was Tuscany Prime's entrance. Evelyn's lips twitched into a subtle grin. It wasn't satisfaction exactly, more like quiet recognition. The symmetry of it. The woman who once prided herself on control, now reduced to filtered dramatics and hashtags. She didn't like to gloat, but sometimes silence said everything. A familiar knock came from the front door. "Back here," she called, already knowing who it was. Marla appeared around the corner, sunglasses perched on her head, a takeout bag dangling from one hand and a mischievous sparkle in her eye. "I brought lunch," she announced, dropping the bag on the patio table. "Filet tips from Prime." The irony was too delicious to resist. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "Matt's going to think I'm taunting them." "Good," Marla said, unwrapping the containers. "Let him." They sat together under the shade umbrella, the afternoon sun stretching across the terracotta tiles. Marla carved a bite of steak and sighed contentedly. "You know," she said between mouthfuls, "being uninvited never looked so good." Evelyn lifted her glass of iced tea. "To being uninvited," she said, her tone dry but elegant. Marla raised hers in return, grinning. "With style." They clinked glasses, the sound bright and satisfying against the quiet hum of cicadas. When the laughter faded, Evelyn's phone buzzed again. She glanced at the screen. Jason's name. She let it ring once, twice, 3 times before setting it back down. Marla watched her carefully. "You're not going to answer, are you?" "No," Evelyn said simply. "Not tonight. Not tomorrow. Maybe not at all." "Now that's restraint," Marla murmured. Evelyn's smile deepened, soft and deliberate. "Not restraint," she said, turning her gaze toward the horizon where the sun dipped low over the mountains. "Timing." She leaned back, letting the light wash over her, content in the knowledge that sometimes the most elegant revenge didn't need spectacle, just precision. Inside, her phone chimed again. Another notification. Lindsay had posted a new story. "Birthday plans ruined, but still fabulous. Sigh, class over chaos." Evelyn didn't even open it. She just reached for her wine glass, the chilled condensation dampening her fingers, and whispered under her breath, "You keep telling yourself that." Then, almost absently, she checked her inbox. A new email from Matt Gold, Tuscany Prime. Subject: cancellation log. Hartley party. A small thrill rippled through her. She tapped it open, read the clean digital confirmation, and pressed save. For records. For memory. For what came next. The morning after the so-called birthday disaster, Scottsdale woke to a sky the color of clean linen. Bright, calm, deceptively peaceful. Evelyn, however, didn't bother with peace. She had routine. By 8 a.m., her garden was watered, her French press emptied, and the evidence of last night's quiet triumph reduced to a few lipstick-stained wine glasses drying in the rack. She moved with that graceful precision she'd always had, the kind that made people mistake control for ease. Her phone buzzed on the counter, again and again. "Jason, can we talk?" "Jason, it got out of hand last night. I didn't know the reservation was under your name." "Jason, Mom, please answer me." Evelyn read each message slowly, her expression unreadable, then locked the screen and slid the phone face down beside her coffee. She didn't delete them. She didn't reply. Just let them sit. Outside, a hummingbird darted near the feeder, wings flickering in the light, frenetic, pointless motion. Jason reminded her of that sometimes. Always buzzing, never still long enough to notice the pattern he'd created. By noon, the day had warmed, and Evelyn sat in her sunroom, reading the morning paper. But peace didn't last long. Her phone lit up again. This time, the unmistakable glow of a social media notification. Lindsay Hartley. "When you expect class, get chaos. Ishi, birthday gone wrong." The attached photo was ridiculous. Lindsay half pouting, half smirking at a mirror, wine glass in hand, captioned with faux philosophical flair. The comments were a cascade of digital sympathy. "Ugh, people are so rude these days." "You deserve better, girl." "At least you looked fabulous." Evelyn exhaled a quiet laugh through her nose. It was all so performative. Chaos as content. Embarrassment disguised as empowerment. A second notification popped up almost immediately after. "Marla Gaines tagged you in a post." Evelyn tapped it open and smirked. The photo showed Marla at last night's dinner table, wine raised high, her caption gleefully unapologetic. "Dinner with queens. Drama with amateurs. No reservations required." Within minutes, it was getting traction. Marla's friends, a sharp, savvy circle of Scottsdale women who'd all endured their own family soap operas, filled the comments with laughing emojis and clinking glass gifs. Evelyn didn't comment. She didn't have to. The internet, she knew, had its own sense of justice. Her phone rang. Jason again. She watched it light up, pulse, fade, light up again. She let it ring until voicemail caught it, the sound echoing faintly in the still air. Then, silence. Until another buzz. A new message, this time from an unsaved number. "Tina, Tuscany Prime. Morning, Ms. Hartley. Hope you don't mind." I thought you'd want to see this. A video file followed. Evelyn hesitated only a second before tapping play. The footage was grainy, taken from behind the hostess stand the previous night. Lindsay stood near the door, visibly frustrated, voice raised just enough to carry over the ambient restaurant noise. "You don't understand," Lindsay snapped. "We had a reservation for 10. It's my birthday." Tina's calm voice, recorded in the background, was steady and professional. "I completely understand, ma'am. Unfortunately, the reservation was canceled earlier in the day. The system shows the contact is—" "I don't care who the contact is," Lindsay interrupted. "Fix it." Evelyn paused the video there. Lindsay's face was mid-sneer, a perfect portrait of entitlement. Glossy, impatient, caught in her own lack of self-awareness. She exhaled through her nose, equal parts amusement and something colder. Then she tapped Save Video and scrolled to her files. The folder title came easily. New folder. Heartly Dinner. She dropped the video inside and locked her phone. No comment, no reply, no outward gloating. Just quiet collection. Evidence, not emotion. The satisfaction wasn't sharp this time. It was cool and measured. The kind of satisfaction that lingers under the ribs and hums like a private melody. A soft knock broke her focus. The mail carrier, waving through the glass, handed her a small envelope. All gold-edged, formal. She thanked him absently and turned it over. The return address read, "The Scottsdale Garden Club, Spring Gala Invitation Committee." Evelyn smiled faintly. Another event, another table. Her phone buzzed one final time on the counter, Jason's name glowing across the screen. She watched it until the light dimmed again, then turned away. The sound of wind chimes whispering through the half-open door. Tomorrow, she thought, he'd try in person. He always did. And she was ready for that conversation, just not as the mother he remembered. By the time Jason's SUV pulled into the driveway, the Arizona sun had just begun to soften, washing the stucco walls of Evelyn's home in gold. She saw him from the kitchen window, carrying a bouquet that looked straight out of a grocery store display, too bright, too mismatched, the kind of arrangement bought in haste. He paused at the door before ringing, shoulders hunched as though already bracing for the conversation. Evelyn didn't make him wait long. When she opened the door, her expression was calm, almost polite. "Jason." "Hey, Mom," he said, voice careful, searching her face for an opening. "Can I come in?" She stepped aside without a word. The faint citrus scent of the foyer greeted him, the same smell she'd used in every home she'd ever had, the same quiet order he'd grown up in. He set the flowers on the console table. "They're for you," he said awkwardly. "I see that. And I brought coffee." He lifted a cardboard tray from his other hand. "Your favorite. Half calf, oat milk, no foam." Lindsay reminded me. Evelyn's brow twitched slightly. How thoughtful of her. He took that as permission to keep talking. "Listen, things got out of hand the other night. The whole dinner. It wasn't supposed to be like that." Evelyn gestured toward the sitting room. "Then perhaps you should start by telling me what it was supposed to be." Jason hesitated, following her to the couch. "Just a small thing. Friends, family. Well, her family mostly. I didn't realize your name was still on the reservation. I swear I didn't." Evelyn sat, folding one leg neatly over the other. "And yet you used my number, my information, and my credit card. Out of habit, I suppose?" He flinched. "I guess. Yeah, I just didn't think." "No," she said softly. "You didn't." For a few seconds, the only sound was the faint ticking of the clock on the mantel. Jason shifted on the couch, every bit the boy she remembered scuffing his shoes during childhood apologies. "Mom," he said finally, "you knew we'd be embarrassed." Lindsay was humiliated. Evelyn tilted her head slightly, studying him. Then maybe, she said, her voice steady. Don't use my name to exclude me. Jason's jaw clenched. She didn't mean it like that. How did she mean it? Evelyn asked. Because the words, no, mother-in-law were written clearly enough in the notes. That seems fairly literal to me. He opened his mouth, closed it again. I just wanted to keep things peaceful. Peaceful, she repeated, tasting the word like something bitter. You mean convenient. Mom, please. His voice cracked slightly, that fragile tone between pleading and frustration. Can't we just put this behind us? Lindsay feels awful. She said maybe we can have a dinner here, make it up to you. Evelyn smiled, that small, serene expression that Jason had once mistaken for forgiveness. I'm sure she did. He reached forward, elbows on his knees, palms open. Will you at least try to forgive her? She looked at him for a long moment, letting the silence stretch until he fidgeted under the weight of it. When she finally spoke, her voice was cool, deliberate, precise. Forgiveness, she said, isn't required. He blinked. What do you mean? Evelyn rose from her seat, walked to the secretary desk by the window, and pulled open a drawer. She removed a crisp envelope, sealed and addressed in neat handwriting, and placed it gently on the coffee table in front of him. What's this? He asked. 30 days' notice, she replied. For you and Lindsay to vacate the guest house. Jason stared at her, uncomprehending. You're evicting us? I'm granting you the independence you and your wife so clearly value, Evelyn said evenly. Consider it an opportunity to plan your next dinner, without the inconvenience of family proximity. Mom, he whispered, shaking his head. You can't be serious. I'm always serious, Jason. You just rarely notice. He sank back against the couch, the weight of her words settling like dust. Where are we supposed to go? He asked quietly. I imagine you'll figure it out, Evelyn said. You always do when it's someone else's problem. She walked him to the door, the bouquet still sitting untouched on the console. As she opened it, the cool evening air spilled inside. Jason turned once more. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Evelyn's voice softened, not with sympathy, but finality. Neither did I, but here we are. He left without another word, the door closing behind him with a soft, decisive click. Evelyn stood in the entryway for a long moment, then looked down at the flowers, bright, clashing, short-lived. She carried them to the kitchen sink, filled a vase with water, and set them in anyway. She wasn't cruel, just done. As the petals trembled faintly under the stream, her phone buzzed once more. A message from Marla. You good? Evelyn typed back. Perfectly. Then she looked toward the guest house through the window, its lights glowing warm in the dusk, and whispered to herself, not for long. By Thursday morning, the desert heat had already begun its slow climb, pressing against the windows like a living thing. Evelyn sat at her kitchen table, sunlight glinting off the rim of her coffee cup as she reread the printed notice one last time. 30 days. Clear, legal, final. Through the glass doors she could see the guest house, once a cozy haven she'd built out of generosity, now feeling more like a burden that had overstayed its welcome. The curtains were still drawn, the patio cluttered with Lindsay's potted succulents and Jason's half-finished projects. At precisely 9, the side door opened. Lindsay emerged first, phone in hand, her robe silk and her expression sharp. Jason followed, bleary-eyed and tentative. They crossed the lawn toward the main house like people approaching an execution. Evelyn opened the door before they could knock. Morning, she said, voice even, polite. Lindsay waved the paper she'd clearly pulled from the mailbox. You can't be serious with this, Evelyn. 30 days? Are you actually evicting us? Evelyn gestured for them to come in. Not evicting. Enforcing. Jason's eyes darted nervously between them. Mom, we need to talk about this. I've already said everything that needs saying, Evelyn replied. She motioned toward the table where a neat folder lay beside her coffee. You'll find copies of the informal rental agreement, plus the records of utilities and repairs. You've contributed to neither for 6 months. Lindsay's laugh was brittle. Oh, so now you're keeping score? Evelyn met her gaze calmly. It's called accountability. This is about the dinner, isn't it? Lindsay snapped. You're still angry that you weren't invited. This is... God, it's spiteful. Evelyn's voice stayed soft, almost kind. You wanted space, she said. I'm giving it to you. Lindsay blinked, momentarily thrown. Jason shifted beside her, hands in his pockets, guilt written all over him. Mom, he started. Please, can we just... No, Jason. Evelyn's tone sliced through the air, gentle but immovable. This isn't punishment, it's correction. You've blurred too many lines between generosity and obligation. I'm simply redrawing them. Lindsay scoffed, tossing the paper onto the counter. You're unbelievable. On the contrary, Evelyn said, I'm finally very believable. The tension hung thick. Even the refrigerator's hum felt intrusive. Jason exhaled, defeated. Where are we supposed to go in 30 days? I imagine, Evelyn said, her words slow and measured. You'll manage. You both seem quite resourceful when it comes to appearances. Lindsay glared at her. You're going to regret this. Evelyn's smile didn't waver. Doubtful? From the hallway came a small voice, hesitant, soft. Grandma? All three turned. Devon stood there in pajama shorts, hair mussed, eyes wide. He must have overheard more than they realized. He looked from his father to his grandmother, confusion flickering across his face. Evelyn knelt down slightly, softening instantly. Hey, sweetheart, she said gently. You're up early. He nodded. I heard voices. It's okay, she said. Just adult stuff. He studied her for a moment, then stepped forward and wrapped his arms around her waist. Evelyn froze, startled, then held him, one hand resting lightly on his back, steady and protective. Lindsay looked away, uncomfortable. Jason's jaw tightened. Devon whispered something Evelyn barely caught. I like it when you talk calm. Her heart gave a tiny ache, the kind she didn't let show. That's the trick, she murmured. Calm wins. When Devon returned to his room, the silence that followed was heavier than before. I expect the keys by the end of the month, Evelyn said simply, straightening. And please, do not leave the guest house in disarray. I'd prefer to keep it in better shape than our relationship. Lindsay muttered something under her breath that sounded like unbelievable. Jason just nodded. They left without another word, the screen door slamming harder than necessary behind them. Evelyn stood there a long moment, listening to the echo fade. Then she reached for her phone. Marla answered on the first ring. Tell me it's done. It's done, Evelyn said. Good. I'll come by tomorrow. We'll start going through that attic. Make some space, clear things out. You've been saying for years you wanted to downsize. Evelyn allowed herself the faintest smile. Maybe it's time. New season, new boundaries, Marla said brightly. Evelyn looked out toward the guest house, sunlight catching on the windows like warning lights. Exactly. She hung up, set her coffee cup in the sink, and pulled out a notepad. At the top of a fresh page, she wrote 30 days. Then, beneath it, the start of something cleaner. Outside, the wind picked up, rustling the lemon tree by the fence, and from the guest house faintly came the sound of Lindsay's angry voice, rising, clipped, defensive. Evelyn didn't bother listening this time. She just closed the window, silencing the noise. Then she whispered to herself, almost as a promise, "This house is mine again." The first week after the notice passed in a haze of quiet, methodical preparation. Evelyn treated it not as an act of spite, but of maintenance, the way one prunes a tree to save it from choking on its own growth. She sat in her study most mornings, a stack of old invoices and bank statements spread across the desk, her reading glasses perched low on her nose. Each bill told its own small story of neglect. Electricity, internet, water. Every expense quietly absorbed, every late-night charge Jason promised to settle later. She totaled them neatly on a yellow legal pad, the numbers climbing with a kind of grim satisfaction. At 10 sharp, her phone buzzed. Angela Klein, her attorney and former client from her event planning days, had texted, "Here at your gate. Let's make this ironclad." Evelyn smiled faintly. "Always punctual," she murmured, rising to meet her. Angela was brisk and polished, her blazer immaculate despite the heat. "You look serene," she said as she set her briefcase down. "Most people in your position would be pacing." Evelyn poured her coffee. "Serenity is strategy." "Then let's strategize," Angela said, opening her case and pulling out a folder. "You've been covering their utilities, groceries, lawn care, and property maintenance. That's not just generosity, that's quantifiable support. We'll document it as back expenses owed for use of the premises." Evelyn slid over her organized stack of papers. "All the receipts are here, and the utilities are still under my name." Angela scanned them quickly, nodding with approval. "This is more than enough. I can file an informal claim. But honestly, just showing them this letter will make them fold." Evelyn took a slow sip of her coffee. "I'm not trying to ruin them. I just want them out." "Of course," Angela said, "but we'll make sure they understand that freeloading has a price." The faintest smile tugged at Evelyn's mouth. "They'll learn that part soon enough." By the end of the meeting, everything was neatly sealed in a labeled envelope. Angela gathered her files, promised to follow up within 48 hours, and left with a handshake that felt like quiet closure. As the door clicked shut, Evelyn exhaled. The sound of distant arguing drifted faintly from the guest house. Lindsay's voice sharp, Jason's muffled and defensive. Evelyn ignored it. She had spent years filling silence with peace offerings. Now she let the noise exist without responding to it. That evening, as the desert sky deepened to indigo, her phone buzzed again. "Jason, please, don't do this to your grandson." Evelyn stared at the message for several seconds. The phrasing was predictable. Emotional leverage disguised as concern. She typed slowly, deliberately. "I'm doing this because of him." She hit send and placed the phone down, the words final and unadorned. Across the yard, the lights in the guest house flickered. She saw shadows moving behind the blinds, Jason pacing, Lindsay gesturing wildly. There was a strange comfort in watching it from a distance, like observing a storm from behind soundproof glass. The next morning brought a different kind of sound, the hum of a pickup truck pulling into her driveway. Evelyn stepped outside, squinting against the sun. It was Mr. Granger, her neighbor of 20 years, holding a paint roller and a can of eggshell white. "Morning, Evelyn," he called out. "Heard you might be freshening up the guest house soon." She smiled, amused. "Word travels fast." "Small street," he said with a shrug. "I figured I'd lend a hand. I've got leftover paint from my remodel. Same color as yours. You want to give it a clean slate?" Evelyn tilted her head, considering. "That's exactly what I want, Harold. A clean slate." They spent the morning in companionable silence, scraping old paint chips from the trim. The air smelled faintly of citrus and sun-warmed wood. For the first time in months, Evelyn's shoulders felt light. When they finished the first coat, she stepped back to look at the brightened siding, crisp, pure, renewed. Harold wiped his brow. "Looks like it's ready for someone new." Evelyn's gaze drifted to the window, where a curtain inside the guest house fluttered, as if someone had been watching. Lindsay, no doubt. Not just anyone, Evelyn said softly. Someone who knows what a roof means. Harold chuckled, oblivious to the layered meaning. You've still got that spark, Evelyn. She smiled. I never lost it. I just stopped wasting it. As he drove off, the newly painted guest house glowed in the golden light, almost mocking the occupants inside. Evelyn walked back toward her porch, brushing a fleck of white paint from her wrist. From her phone came a soft ping, an email notification from Angela. Draft of claim, ready for review. Evelyn opened it, scanned the document, and pressed save without hesitation. Out across the yard, she could hear Lindsay's voice again, angry and tight. She can't do this. We'll fight it. Evelyn turned toward the sound, her tone barely above a whisper, calm, composed, immovable. Try me. It started with an unfamiliar sound, a car pulling into the driveway at 11 p.m. Evelyn noticed the headlights slicing through her blinds, then the distinct click of the guest house door opening. Laughter followed. Male. 2 women's voices, the shuffle of luggage wheels across the patio bricks. She stood by the kitchen window, eyes narrowing. Jason and Lindsay hadn't mentioned visitors. Not that they mentioned much anymore. From the shadows, she watched as Lindsay, in leggings and an oversized sweater, ushered the small group inside, smiling that brittle, hostess smile. Moments later, the porch light flicked off. By morning, Evelyn's suspicions had crystallized. A single search confirmed it. Private Scottsdale Casita, cozy desert getaway. Her stomach went cold. There it was. Her guest house, photographed down to the ceramic planters she'd bought last spring. The listing description was chirpy, deceitful, and painfully familiar. Relax in this newly renovated desert retreat, hosted by a local family, 5-star comfort, great amenities. Local family. Evelyn's lips curved, humorless. She scrolled further, finding the host's name, Lindsay H. The gall was breathtaking. By noon, she was on the phone. Airbnb Host Integrity Department, this is Andrea. The woman's voice chimed. Good morning, Evelyn said smoothly. I'm calling to report unauthorized use of my property. Andrea's tone shifted immediately to business. Can you confirm the address? Evelyn recited it. The guest house behind my main residence. I own the parcel outright. My tenants, Jason and Lindsay Hartley, are illegally subletting it as a short-term rental. Andrea typed rapidly. Do you have proof of ownership? I do, Evelyn replied, already scanning her desktop for the digital deed she'd saved years ago. I can forward the documentation and photographs within the hour. Once verified, Andrea said, the listing will be taken down within 24 hours. Evelyn smiled faintly. Let's make it 12. She hung up, sent the files, and poured herself a fresh cup of coffee. Her pulse was steady. No anger, no thrill. Just that cool current of clarity that always accompanied the moment before resolution. By evening, the listing was gone. The cached link read, "This listing is no longer available." At nearly the same time, Lindsay's shrill voice carried through the courtyard. It's down. The whole page is gone. I had bookings through next month. Evelyn sipped her coffee and called Angela. I assume you've seen it? Angela said without greeting. I have, Evelyn replied, and I'd like to take the next step. I thought you might. Papers shuffled on Angela's end. I'll draft a cease and desist and an invoice for any income they generated. Even if it was just one night, it's illegal. You'll want to send it certified. Perfect. Evelyn glanced out the window where Lindsay stood on the patio, phone pressed to her ear, gesturing wildly. Make sure the tone's professional. I prefer my fury in print. Angela laughed softly. You really are terrifying when you're calm. Occupational hazard, Evelyn said. By the following afternoon, the cease and desist was en route. The neighbors would soon know too, not from Evelyn, but from Lindsay's own unraveling. Because Scottsdale gossip moved faster than wildfire, and by sunset, word had spread that Lindsay Hartley had been caught running an illegal rental. Marla texted first. Check her socials. It's like watching a live implosion. Evelyn opened Instagram. Lindsay's profile, once perfectly curated, had begun to fracture. Followers dropped in clusters. Recent posts were filled with passive-aggressive captions. People love to see others fall when they can't climb themselves. The comment section told another story. Didn't you scam your MIL's property? So tacky. Karma always checks in, huh? Evelyn set her phone aside, the faintest flicker of satisfaction warming her chest. A knock sounded on the back door. Marla stood there, a bakery box in one hand, grin unapologetic. Emergency cupcakes, she announced. Celebratory, of course. Evelyn arched an eyebrow. For what occasion? For the downfall of the Scottsdale subletter, Marla said, stepping in. You've officially graduated from patient to poetic. Evelyn couldn't help a small laugh. Poetic maybe, but not finished. Oh? Marla asked, curious. There's still paperwork to settle, Evelyn said, and a move to enforce. Marla set the box down, opening it to reveal 3 perfectly frosted cupcakes, gold sprinkles glinting under the kitchen lights. Then I'll bring champagne next time. Evelyn picked one up, its icing smooth and flawless. Make it brute, she said. Sweet doesn't suit me lately. Outside, the sound of a door slamming broke the quiet. Lindsay's voice cut through the air again, sharper than ever. Evelyn looked toward the guest house, eyes calm, lips curling into a knowing smile. They'll come to me next, she said softly. They always do when they're cornered. By Monday, the desert air had turned thick with the kind of quiet that always precedes a scandal breaking wide open. Evelyn knew it by instinct, that strange stillness before gossip grows legs. She'd seen it too many times back when she planned events for Scottsdale's elite. The moment whispers started shifting from private to public. It began innocently enough. A post on the Desert Current, a local lifestyle blog that trafficked in curated brunch photos and who's who lists, appeared under the headline, Airbnb Drama in Desert Hills, Unauthorized Rentals Spark Neighborhood Dispute. No names were mentioned, not at first, just a prominent Scottsdale couple allegedly operating an unlicensed short-term rental on family property. But Evelyn recognized the accompanying photo, the guest house, her guest house, its newly painted white trim gleaming under the Arizona sun. Marla texted her a screenshot with 3 words, "It's happening." Evelyn allowed herself a single slow exhale, then clicked share. But she didn't tag or comment. Instead, she opened an encrypted email, attached the receipts, screenshots, and her original ownership documents, and sent them from a private address to the reporter listed on the article. No name, no signature. Subject line, verification materials. Within hours, the update went live. Update. Documents confirm unauthorized subletting. Property owner provided proof of ownership. The image had changed too. A zoomed-in shot of Lindsay's Airbnb profile, with the familiar blonde headshot blurred but recognizable enough for anyone who followed Scottsdale's social scene. By afternoon, the fallout had started. Lindsay's attempt to control the narrative was immediate and clumsy. She posted a photo of herself in oversized sunglasses, holding a latte captioned, "People love a misunderstanding when it isn't theirs." The comments section was merciless. Misunderstanding? Girl, you ran a hotel out of your MIL's backyard. So that's why you unfollowed everyone from Desert Current. Imagine getting evicted by your own mother-in-law. Couldn't be me. Jason tried to play defense with a single post, a bland text-only story that read, "We all make mistakes. Family matters shouldn't be public." It lasted 6 hours before he deleted his entire Instagram. Evelyn didn't gloat. She didn't need to. The internet had a way of doing her work for her. By the time evening fell, the story had gone statewide. Phoenix influencers were resharing it, tagging Schwach Airbnb fail and Wakshak Hartley House. A few accounts had even started speculating on which neighborhood it was. Evelyn's phone pinged nonstop, but she kept it face down, sipping her tea as the sunset bled pink and copper over her garden. When she finally glanced at her messages, one new notification stood out. A private message request on Instagram from a name she vaguely recognized. From Akali Peisher Bryant, Lindsay's former maid of honor. Evelyn opened it. "You don't know me, but I've known Lindsay a long time. Just wanted to say, you're a legend. I would have paid money to see her face when that article dropped. Bravo." Evelyn smiled. Not wide, not triumphant, just a quiet acknowledgement of balance restored. She typed a brief reply. Some lessons teach themselves. Then she set the phone aside and went back to her crossword. A knock sounded around 8. Marla entered without waiting for an answer, holding a canvas tote that read, in bold cursive letters, "Dinner canceled. Drama served." Evelyn stared at it, then laughed. An honest, unguarded laugh that filled the kitchen. "Please tell me you didn't actually make that." "Oh, I made 6, Marla said proudly, pulling another from the bag. "Limited edition. I figure we can sell them at the neighborhood charity auction. Let people wear a little justice with their wine." Evelyn shook her head, amused. "You're incorrigible." "And you," Marla said, pointing a cupcake at her, "are officially the most talked about woman in Scottsdale. The quiet kind of famous. The dangerous kind." Evelyn smiled faintly, twisting her ring around her finger. "It's not danger. It's accountability with good lighting." Outside, the wind shifted, rustling the lemon tree by the patio. The same one that had shaded 100 polite family barbecues before everything fractured. Evelyn's phone buzzed again. Another message. But this time, from Jason. Just one line. "Can we please talk, Mom?" Her smile faded slightly. She stared at the screen for a long moment, then pressed the side button until the light dimmed to black. Marla caught the look. "You're not going soft on me, are you?" "Not soft," Evelyn said, eyes on the darkened glass. "Strategic." She stood, gathering their empty cups. "The truth's finally out. Now we'll see who still thinks they can rewrite it." Marla raised her tote bag like a trophy. "And if they try?" Evelyn met her gaze, that serene steel in her voice again. "Then I'll publish my version." By mid-June, the guest house stood empty again, a hollow shell of polished floors and silence. The last traces of Jason and Lindsay were gone. The mirrored vanity, the clashing throw pillows, the fake fiddle-leaf fig Lindsay swore was real enough for photos. Evelyn had it all hauled away, every piece of it, down to the last abandoned candle. The quiet was staggering at first, not heavy, not mournful, but liberating. It was the kind of quiet that hummed with possibility. She stood in the doorway, sunlight spilling across the floor, and inhaled deeply. For the first time in years, the air smelled like her home again, citrus, cedar, and the faint trace of lemon polish. By the end of the week, she'd hired Sophie Lynn, a local decorator known for her clean, minimal style. The kind of woman who believed beauty came from light and breath, not clutter and performance. "So," Sophie asked during their first walkthrough, tablet in hand, "what do you want this space to be?" Evelyn looked around, at the empty walls, the freshly repainted trim, the wide window overlooking the garden. "Mine," she said. "Finally mine." They spent the next 2 weeks transforming the space. Soft linen curtains, an easel by the window, shelves for books and sketch pads. A daybed dressed in cream, with a quilt Evelyn had stitched back when her patience was measured in thread instead of words. Sophie worked in silence most days, only breaking it to ask about details. Wood stain, fabric, light fixtures. Evelyn surprised herself by caring deeply about all of it. On the final day, when the last box was unpacked and the final frame hung, a watercolor of desert poppies, Evelyn stood in the doorway again, but this time, peace didn't feel like absence. It felt like presence. She had reclaimed not just the space, but the story attached to it. That weekend, Devon came by. Jason dropped him off without coming to the door. A coward's courtesy, Evelyn thought. The boy carried a small shovel and a packet of marigold seeds. "Dad said you needed help in the garden," Devon said, almost shyly. Evelyn smiled, kneeling beside him near the lemon tree. "I could use an extra pair of hands." They worked quietly in the afternoon heat, the soil warm and forgiving under their fingertips. Devon dug small, crooked holes. Evelyn followed behind, smoothing the edges, pressing seeds into the earth. After a while, Devon looked up, his face smudged with dirt. "Mom says we can't live here anymore." Evelyn's hand stilled. She looked at him carefully. "That's true." "She said it's because you're mad at her." Evelyn brushed soil from her palms. "I'm not mad," she said softly. "I'm making room." "For what?" "For peace." He thought about that for a long moment, squinting up at her. "Can I still come over?" Evelyn's throat tightened unexpectedly. She rested a hand on his shoulder. "You're always welcome here, Devon. Always." He nodded, serious and small, and went back to digging. By sunset, the marigolds were planted, the soil watered, and the boy asleep on the porch swing, the rhythmic sway rocking him softly. Evelyn sat beside him for a while, the air cooling around them, the cicadas beginning their chorus. That night, when Marla stopped by, the yard glowed with soft amber lights strung between the trees. "Well," Marla said, looking around approvingly, "you've outdone yourself. It looks like a magazine spread." "I wasn't aiming for that," Evelyn replied. "Just peace." Marla grinned. "Peace looks expensive on you." They shared a quiet laugh before Marla clapped her hands. "Now, hear me out. We host a summer soiree here. Small, tasteful, no drama. A celebration of your new chapter." Evelyn tilted her head, pretending to consider. "A party about peace. Isn't that a contradiction?" Marla smirked. "Only if you invite the wrong people." Before Evelyn could respond, headlights flashed at the gate. A familiar car door closed, followed by footsteps. But instead of Jason or Lindsay, it was Tina carrying a gift bag. "I didn't mean to drop by unannounced," Tina said, smiling shyly. "But Matt wanted to send this. From everyone at Tuscany Prime." Evelyn untied the ribbon, pulling out a bottle of deep red wine and a handwritten note. "For the woman who knows when to cancel and when to celebrate. Cheers, from your friends across the plaza." Evelyn couldn't help but laugh, quiet, genuine, unguarded. "Tell Matt I appreciate the timing." "I will," Tina said. "And for what it's worth, everyone at the restaurant still talks about you. In a good way." Marla raised her glass. "Of course they do. She's a legend." Evelyn looked out toward the glowing guest house, its windows warm against the dark, her sanctuary, no longer anyone else's stage. She turned back to her friends, her voice soft but resolute. "I paid for my peace. Now it's time to live in it." And somewhere deep in the desert night, a faint breeze stirred, as if carrying away the last remnants of everyone who'd taken advantage of her silence. By late August, the Scottsdale sun had gentled into its softer gold, the kind that made even the desert look forgiving. Evelyn's phone buzzed one morning with an email from the Civic Neighborhood Council. She skimmed it casually, expecting another property tax update or volunteer notice. Instead, the subject line stopped her cold. "Congratulations! You've been nominated for the 2025 Neighborhood Integrity Award." Evelyn blinked, rereading it twice. Beneath the headline, A short paragraph explained that she'd been recognized for her steadfast commitment to property ethics, community fairness, and restoration of local values. Marla, of course, was the first to find out. "You're telling me they're giving you an award for kicking out your freeloading family and exposing an illegal Airbnb?" Marla nearly choked on her iced tea when Evelyn told her. "That's not an award. That's divine symmetry." Evelyn chuckled softly, stirring sugar into her coffee. "I didn't campaign for it, if that's what you're implying." "No, but the universe did," Marla said. "And I, for one, think it's overdue." When the official invitation arrived, Evelyn noted the venue, Tuscany Prime Steakhouse, and almost laughed. The irony was too cinematic to ignore. The same restaurant where it had all begun. The same one where she'd watched her son and daughter-in-law stand helplessly outside while she dined across the plaza in quiet triumph. "Fate has a sense of humor," she told Marla. "Oh, honey," Marla said, grinning, "fate takes reservations." The night of the awards dinner glowed with a peculiar kind of anticipation. Tuscany Prime had been polished to perfection. White linens, polished silver, a cascade of orchids down the center of every table. Matt himself stood at the entrance, greeting guests with his trademark composure. When he spotted Evelyn, his smile turned genuine. "Ms. Hartley," he said warmly, extending his hand. "Welcome back." "Thank you, Matt," she said, slipping her hand into his. "I see the place hasn't changed." "Only the guest list," he said, eyes glinting. He led her and Marla to their table, front and center, near the small stage set up for speakers. It was the best seat in the house. As they settled in, Tina appeared with 2 flutes of champagne. "Compliments of the staff," she said with a wink. "And personally, it's nice to see a table with actual class tonight." Evelyn smiled. "Always the diplomat, Tina." "Learned from the best," Tina said, nodding before slipping back toward the hostess stand. The dinner unfolded beautifully. Perfectly cooked steaks, speeches about community resilience, applause punctuating every toast. Evelyn sat through it all with quiet grace, her expression composed, though a part of her couldn't stop marveling at the full circle of it. When her name was called, there was a brief pause, the kind that comes when the audience recognizes that a story has been circulating just beneath the surface. She rose smoothly, walked to the stage, and accepted the crystal plaque with the same poise she'd shown through every upheaval. "Integrity," she said into the microphone, "isn't about being nice. It's about being clear. And sometimes clarity costs you company, but never your peace." The applause came slow at first, then built until the room was clapping in rhythm. Marla dabbed at her eyes, whispering, "Damn, that's my girl." Matt caught Evelyn's gaze from across the room, nodding with the faintest trace of pride. As the evening wound down, the soft strains of piano music filled the space. Dessert arrived, tiramisu with gold-dusted chocolate curls, just as the parking lot outside filled with departing cars. Marla was mid-laugh over some witty remark when Evelyn's gaze flicked toward the window, her hand stilled on her glass. A figure stood in the glow of the parking lights. Lindsay, unmistakable even at a distance, staring toward the restaurant doors. Her posture was stiff, defensive, her face half hidden behind oversized sunglasses she didn't need at night. Marla followed Evelyn's gaze. "Well, well," she murmured. The ghost of dinner's passed. Lindsay lingered a moment longer, as if weighing whether to come in. Then, seeing Evelyn at the center table, radiant, calm, surrounded by applause, she turned sharply and walked back to her car. The engine flared to life, tires whispering over asphalt, fading into the night. Tina appeared again just then, balancing a tray. She set down 2 more glasses of champagne and leaned close enough for only Evelyn to hear. "Best view in the house tonight, huh?" Evelyn's lips curved. "Always." Tina winked before walking off, the light catching on her name tag like a flashbulb. Marla raised her glass high. To poetic endings. Evelyn clinked hers gently. And to peace that lasts longer than applause. But as she looked out the window, the parking lot empty now, save for her reflection, Evelyn felt something shift inside her. Not pity, not pride. Just the calm awareness that the story had moved on, and she'd finally stepped out of it intact. Her hand rested lightly on the plaque beside her plate, the engraved words gleaming in the candlelight. Evelyn Hartley, for integrity, accountability, and quiet strength. She traced them once, softly, then set her glass down. "Come on," she murmured to Marla. "Let's go home. I've had enough tables for one lifetime." The letter came tucked between a grocery flyer and a water bill. A thick ivory envelope with the city seal embossed on it. Evelyn almost missed it. When she slid it open, the language was formal, polite, and utterly unexpected. The Scottsdale Fair Housing Committee was inviting her to serve as a part-time board member. "Your recent recognition for community integrity," it read, "and your advocacy for ethical property practices have made you an ideal candidate." She let out a small, incredulous laugh. "Ideal," she murmured. "That's new." When she told Marla, her friend practically dropped her latte. "You? A city official? Lord, they really don't know what they've unleashed." "It's only part-time," Evelyn said, smoothing the paper against her kitchen counter. "And I won't be shaking hands and cutting ribbons. It's advocacy work. Housing rights, senior protection, property misuse." "So, the same things you've already been fighting for," Marla said with a smirk. Only now with a nameplate and better lighting. Evelyn couldn't help the grin that tugged at her mouth. Something like that. 2 weeks later, she sat at the long oak table in City Hall, the Arizona sun filtering through glass walls, her nameplate gleaming under fluorescent light. Evelyn Hartley, community representative. The meetings were long, but she didn't mind. She listened more than she spoke, taking notes in her precise cursive. When she did speak, people listened. Her voice, steady and measured, carried weight. "We need to make sure elderly homeowners aren't being coerced into signing leases they don't understand," she said one morning, her tone calm but resolute. "Fair housing starts with fair treatment." Heads nodded. Even the chairwoman, a polished woman half Evelyn's age, looked impressed. It wasn't about revenge anymore. This, Evelyn realized, was what came after. Restoration. She'd spent months reclaiming her own boundaries. Now she was helping others do the same. By September, a local lifestyle section picked up her story. The headline made her snort when she saw it. "The quiet force behind the block. How Evelyn Hartley redefined neighborhood integrity." The article was flattering. Too flattering, she thought. Full of words like grace, strength, and unshakable poise. Marla, of course, bought 3 copies. "You're practically a celebrity," she said, waving the newspaper. "I might need an autograph for my scrapbook of justice." Evelyn rolled her eyes. "You need a hobby." "This is my hobby," Marla shot back. Later that afternoon, a delivery truck pulled into Evelyn's driveway. The driver handed her a long, flat package wrapped in brown paper. The card taped on top read, "Because every queen needs a proper threshold." Inside was a custom doormat, black and gold, the words emblazoned across it in bold script, "Reservations required." Evelyn stood in her doorway laughing, the kind of laugh that loosened years from her shoulders. She set the mat down with care, its message perfectly centered. When Marla called an hour later, pretending innocence, Evelyn answered, "You're ridiculous." "I prefer thoughtfully poetic," Marla said. "And admit it, it looks good." "It looks accurate," Evelyn corrected, smiling. That evening, Devin came over after school, backpack slung over one shoulder. He was taller now, quieter too, a little more thoughtful than she remembered. "I have to write this essay for English," he said, dropping into the kitchen chair. "It's about integrity. You know, like doing the right thing even when it's hard. Mom said you might help me." Evelyn froze for a moment. Lindsay had said that? She sat across from him, folding her hands. "Integrity," she said softly. "That's a good word. Hard one to live by, though." Devin nodded. "I know." He opened his laptop, cursor blinking. "Can you help me start it?" Evelyn smiled faintly. "Let's see what you've got." They worked quietly for the next hour, Devin typing, Evelyn guiding with gentle edits. Every so often, he'd ask for her opinion, and she'd answer carefully, letting him find his own words. When he reached the final line, he looked up. "Is this okay?" he asked. Evelyn leaned over to read. "Integrity isn't about being perfect. It's about being honest, even when it costs you something. My grandma says peace and truth don't always come together, but when they do, it's worth everything." Evelyn's chest tightened. She blinked once, twice, and nodded. "It's perfect." Devin smiled shyly, closing the laptop. "Thanks, Grandma." When he left later that night, Evelyn sat in the glow of her study, laptop open, the cursor waiting. Her hands hovered over the keys, that familiar hum of purpose stirring again. Maybe it was time to write something of her own. She began to type. Integrity isn't about being nice, it's about being clear. Her own words, now echoing back at her in a new context, not as defense, but as legacy. And as the night deepened, Evelyn kept typing, the sound of her keys steady and sure, like rain against glass. The desert twilight shimmered like glass over the freshly lit garden. Strings of amber bulbs traced the lemon trees, flickering against the soft white of linen-covered tables. The scent of roasted rosemary chicken mingled with blooming jasmine, warm bread, and the faint sweetness of peach cobbler cooling on the counter. Evelyn Hartley stood at the French doors, watching as her guests drifted in. Real friends this time, not the kind who came out of duty or appearances. Marla, already dressed in her signature coral wrap, flitted between tables like an unofficial hostess, fussing with napkins and scolding anyone who tried to help. "Sit, for heaven's sake," Marla called out to one of the neighbors. "This isn't a potluck. This is Evelyn's soiree of redemption." Evelyn shook her head, laughing under her breath. "So much for subtlety." "You didn't invite me for subtle," Marla said, grinning. "You invited me for commentary and champagne refills." And it was true. Every detail tonight was Evelyn's, right down to the music floating from the outdoor speakers. Jazz, soft and low. The long table stretched across the patio, set with white dishes edged in gold, crystal glasses catching the last of the daylight. The seating was deliberate, the kind of arrangement only an ex-event planner would perfect. These were people who'd earned their places. Tina sat at one end, laughing with Mr. Granger, her hair pulled back, a glass of Chardonnay in hand. Sophie Lynn, the decorator, chatted animatedly with Matt Gold from Tuscany Prime, a connection Evelyn had orchestrated quietly weeks ago. And Devin, her grandson, sat beside her, straight-backed and proud, his eyes reflecting the candlelight. For once, there was no tension, no subtext, just the easy warmth of belonging. Marla tapped her glass. "Speech, Evelyn," she declared. "You can't set a table this gorgeous and not deliver a few wise words." Evelyn smiled, shaking her head. "I think I've said enough speeches for one lifetime." But Devin stood up before she could sit back down. He looked around, a little nervous but glowing with that kind of earnest confidence that couldn't be faked. "I'll do it," he said. "For Grandma." The chatter faded. Every head turned toward him. Devin cleared his throat, gripping his glass with both hands. "I just wanted to say, He paused, glancing at Evelyn with a shy grin. My grandma taught me that integrity doesn't mean being perfect, it means being honest. And sometimes standing up for yourself even if people don't like it. Marla dabbed at her eyes theatrically. Oh, this kid gets it. Devon smiled wider. So, this is for her. For being the classiest, calmest, and bravest woman I know. To Grandma Evelyn. The glasses rose all around the table, catching the glow of the garden lights. Evelyn lifted hers last, her heart swelling in a way she hadn't expected. Thank you, sweetheart, she said softly. You have no idea how much that means. As laughter and conversation resumed, Evelyn let herself simply be. The sound of forks clinking, the rustle of linen, the hum of good conversation. It all settled around her like a song she hadn't heard in years. Matt leaned over from his end of the table. You know, he said with a grin, I think this garden beats Tuscany Prime. Fewer cancellations, Evelyn replied dryly, earning a laugh. Later, when dessert was served, her own peach cobbler recipe, made the way her mother once taught her, she caught Marla watching her with quiet pride. You did it, Marla said softly. You finally set the table you deserved. Evelyn took a slow sip of her wine, her gaze sweeping across the guests. The laughter, the warmth, the easy joy of it all. Yes, she said, and every seat was worth earning. The night deepened, the stars brightening over the desert horizon. Candles flickered in glass jars along the path. From a distance, the laughter from her patio blended with the chirp of crickets, the rustle of palms, a harmony of peace. Finally paid for, fully claimed. Devon tugged on her sleeve. Grandma, can we do this again next year? Evelyn smiled, brushing a hand over his hair. Next year, and the year after that. She turned toward the glowing table one last time, her friends raising glasses under the canopy of light she'd strung herself. The camera, if there had been one, would have pulled back slowly, capturing the whole tableau. Candlelight, laughter, the soft glow of contentment settling over a woman who'd rewritten her story. One reservation, one boundary, one truth at a time. Evelyn lifted her glass, her voice just above a whisper, the faintest smile curving her lips. They canceled my invite, she said. So I canceled the entire dinner and rewrote the guest list.